we'd like to start by acknowledging that we're recording this episode of our podcast on the unceded sovereign lands of the Gadigal people and pay our respects to their elders past and present. This always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Welcome back to episode 2.
Thank you for being here with us.
Yeah, and before we get started, we just wanted to start with a content warning. Today we're going to be talking about work and disability, and we know that this is a topic that can be really triggering, and it's a topic that we won't ever talk about without a content warning because we're really aware of this. So we just wanted you to know that we will be talking about it today. It's not really a topic we're going to talk about much on our podcast, but it is one we will talk about today. And for me personally, I do work, but I am viewed and have these experiences of being viewed as not disabled enough because I do work. But Tamara, you have a different experience.
Well, I find it so triggering when people ask me, what do you do for work? Because I just feel very behind in my career and like I just haven't done enough. So when people ask me that question, it just leads me down all of these negative thought patterns of me not being good enough and I've just not done enough, to the point that honestly, when I've been invited somewhere and I know that there are going to be new people there, I've sometimes chosen not to go because I just don't want to have to deal with the spiral that will happen when they inevitably ask me what I do, because it's so normalized to ask that question. It's like one of the first questions we ask people when we meet them. But what I think isn't spoken about enough is that by asking that question, we aren't actually getting to know who that person is.
Yeah.
I mean, I think instead we should shift towards asking much more interesting questions, such as, what do you do for fun? Or what makes you happy? I mean, if someone asked me that, I would tell them that food makes me really happy. It's actually one of the prompts on my dating apps that I get way too excited about food.
Yeah, I mean, food is a great topic. You and I could talk about food for hours.
I love food. Like, if you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be and why?
Pizza.
Oh, I love pizza. Or like ragu. Yum.
Yes. But, I think I absolutely agree. There are so many other questions you can ask someone. What are their hobbies? What do they like to do? What music do they like? All of these things that actually tell you about who they are as a person, but aren't it all about work? And I mean, work isn't even, I think, how most people would identify themselves anyway. Like, it's not a main identifier and it doesn't really tell you about them.
I mean, I'm sure that there may be some people, I probably don't know them because I probably am not great friends with them, but who do identify as work being a big part of their life. And sure, that's great. But I think that through shifting away from asking that as like one of the first questions, we're not potentially either triggering or excluding groups of people that haven't or can't be working. Like with me, for example, as you may have seen from our Insta page, I've recently finished studying. And during that time, I was caring for my dad for 10 years until he passed away in September of 2022. So although I would have wanted to have been doing so much more, I just couldn't. Like, I just didn't have the energy to be doing anything more. But I think that's because I haven't been able to. I've very much been viewed as being lazy, like especially, so most of the time my disability is invisible, and I've noticed there's a difference when it's invisible versus visible, and very much when it's invisible, I'm very much viewed in this way of, as I said, being lazy. So I remember a couple years after finishing high school, I had a coffee with my teacher who knows about my disability and the impact it has on me because they taught me during the time that I was diagnosed. And he asked me, what are you up to? And so I told him I was at uni, and he was like, oh, it's like cool that you're studying, but are you also working? And I said no, and I'll never forget his response because he looked at me and he said, oh, so you're a lady of leisure. And I just felt so ashamed and like I was a complete failure.
I am just shaking my head because what a ridiculous thing to say. First of all, studying is like a lot, but I just can't fathom that response. But I think it speaks to how unfathomable it is for a lot of people that there are people who can't work. Like, I know that I've been in conversations talking to people about one of my family members, and they've asked, the person I'm talking to will ask, oh, what do they do for work? And I give a similar response to what that family member will say, literally, to people when they're asked as well, which is, oh, they're full-time disabled, because
I love that response.
they say that because, like, they're like, well, what else am I meant to say? Like, I can't work. So what else am I to say? And, also I think that they get a real kick out of seeing people's discomfort when they respond that way.
Yeah.
But, but, I think that it's entirely valid as well, because it's an uncomfortable conversation to be in. And those people, certainly when they're getting those responses, are feeling uncomfortable because it's never occurred to them, I think, before, that there are people who, can't work, other than when you're old and retired.
Yeah, and there are just like so many negative connotations associated with not working. And so I feel like that almost, I mean, at least with me, I can only speak for me, I feel like it almost forces me to want to essentially prove my disability to someone and prove like how the impacts of it has meant that I haven't been able to do too much, and so I haven't been, productive by like capitalist standards. But then if I do that, I'm then opening myself up to all of this discrimination and stigma that happens when you tell people. And then my fear is, well, what if that means that I potentially won't get employed? I mean, I remember like staying awake many nights, being really scared even to start So You're Disabled, because I thought, oh my God, but what if that impacts on my ability of potentially getting hired one day?
Yeah. And I think that that's so understandable. I mean, I had a whole journey with disclosing my disability in my workplace, but it got to a point, and I was working part-time at this point, where I just couldn't go on. I could not keep working and trying to mask and pretending as though I didn't have this disability, because it was impacting my day-to-day so much, and I was so exhausted every single day after work that I couldn't do anything else. And I mean, that's still quite true, really, but it really just hit a point where I was like, I have to ask for adjustments, because this is just not working.
Yeah, but I mean, what are like the adjustments and the accommodations that you get? I mean, I know that there are some, but are they like all that great? And I mean, if you even think about remote working, like it wasn't until like our community really have benefited from remote working, but it wasn't until like in a pre-COVID world that was such a foreign concept, and it wasn't until COVID really that working from home started to become normalized.
Yeah, absolutely. I could have a whole rant about this, actually. I think not just working from home, but also studying from home, whether you're at uni or high school or primary school, being able to have even a day where you do that study from home or work from home was unfathomable before. I'm using that word a lot today. Before
It's a good word.
Before the pandemic, before COVID, and now is viewed as, something that has been more normalized. I understand there's a lot of places that are still against it, even though it's clear that it works, but I can see the kind of shift, at least for a lot of places, that it is something that is here to stay. And what a relief, really, because I remember pre-COVID, and, there were days where I was in lectures and my head was spinning. I was in pain. I couldn't focus. There was not a single word that was staying in my brain, but I had to keep going because there was no option to not be there other than to get someone's notes. And like, honestly, reading someone's notes, not helpful to me at all. Shout out to my other nonverbal learning disability peeps. But yeah, it's just not helpful whatsoever. So, yeah, that was really hard and
You know,
interesting to see the shift.
It's really interesting that you brought up uni and like school and accommodations there because I found that some of my teachers were really bad at giving any sort of support, but there were other teachers that were so happy to accommodate to sort of my individual needs. And almost every time that they did, they shared with me that they had either like a personal experience of disability or some sort of interaction with disability. And so I think that that just, I feel, links back to how people are much more understanding of disability when they've either been trained in it or had experience in it. So maybe it's a utopian thought, but I feel like everyone in any position of authority should be absolutely at a minimum trained in disability. I think it makes a significant difference.
No, I'm sorry, Tamara. They should, at a minimum, be listening to our podcast and following us on Instagram and TikTok. That's what they should be doing.
Absolutely. I take that back.
But literally, that's why we've started all of this, because we want people to access these conversations and be more aware when interacting with people in their everyday life.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I feel like be aware of, I think it's fantastic if we just circle back to what you said before about how you reached a point where you said, well, no, actually, I need to be asking for adjustments and accommodations in a workplace. But it's so difficult, like I was sharing with my experience, because if you do out it, then you're opening yourself up to all of these, like all of this discrimination. And so I would love to live in a world where there wasn't that fear, because I think that's a reflection of how disability and disabled people are viewed and valued. But instead, if there wasn't that fear of, well, do I disclose it, but then I'm outing myself, but then do I just keep pretending I don't, like I can live in a world without any accommodations? But if we didn't have that fear, then there would be adjustments for everyone that needed it without potentially losing your job because of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like this is a whole conversation in and of itself, but I really think that the fear element is a big one. And like I can feel a little bit of the tears in my eyes when I think about the fear, because it's very real and it's very visceral. I think that it really penetrates every element of our lives as disabled people or people living with disability or people with disabilities. But stay tuned for the next episode where we talk about
Identity.
But yeah, I think that this fear shapes a lot of where we are today. But it also, I think, prevents us from accessing support or is one of the many barriers to support.
There are so many barriers to accessing support. I feel like almost the process of needing to go through all of the paperwork and everything, all the energy that is required is in itself a barrier to accessing support.
Absolutely. I could have a whole rant.
Oh my God, me too. Especially now that I've just like recently graduated and I'm like, oh my God, like even just needing to look at soon I'm going to have to go through like the hiring process, and even just needing to look at all of the like effort it's going to take to go through the processes of trying to access support is just like a deterrent for me from even wanting to do it.
I mean, that's fair. I have been trying to access support so that I'm not exhausted at the end of every day and not able to do anything else except work. And the response I've gotten is, oh, but you're working, so really you're not like disabled enough. You don't need support. What do you need support for? And it's like, to keep working, like to have a life, to maintain my health. What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you need support for? Because I'm disabled and I need support. Like it was such a jarring experience, because to get to the point where you're asking for support already, that's a big deal. That's hard.
So hard.
Because you're already being viewed through a deficit lens. To then ask for support, is, I don't know, on some level I was like, I feel like I'm leaning into that, even though I'm not. It was a whole journey. Anyways, I finally ask for support, which is hard. And then I'm told, oh, you're not disabled enough to need support. And it's like, what are you talking about? I need support. I have a disability. I have multiple, actually, but I am disabled. I need support. What do you mean I'm not disabled enough? What is disabled enough? And like, honestly, I have considered, okay, so if I quit my job, am I disabled enough then? Because I'm not working. But then how do I live? And then I'm a drain on the system because I'm not working and I could be working. And it's like, why is our inherent value tied up in all of this? And then also, why is there disabled enough? Why isn't it enough to just be disabled?
I have so many thoughts, a few different thoughts. So one, I think I'll start with you being told that you're not deficient enough to get support. I mean, I think getting support sometimes for some people like me, if like when I'm having a flare up, just picking an outfit that day is so draining and so tiring, let alone needing to go to the doctors and filling out a million different paperwork to try and get that support. So either you can't get the support because you're physically too unwell and the process of doing it is not accessible, like it's just not made to help anyone that is actually unwell and needs support. Or like you've been told that you're not disabled enough to get support. So then what alternative do we have? And I think that's the thing. There isn't an alternative. And that should just be frightening. Like, it's ironic almost how you're expected to be performing at a certain level and you have to be working in order to survive in this world. But if you're not provided with the necessary support to do that, how are you supposed to do it?
Yep.
Like, we're literally being treated, I would argue, as people that just don't matter or aren't valued because we're not being helped to survive and thrive in this world.
Absolutely.
And if it's not accessible, which it's not, then it's not inclusive.
Absolutely.
So, like, what do we then do?
You know what, Tamara? I think we're going to say, do better.
Oh, absolutely. You have to do better.
Do better. And that's to the people that make the laws, that make the guidelines, that make the policies, that make the paperwork. Do better. And include us because we've got the answers. Our community has the answers. We know it all.
Absolutely. That's why we want to start opening these conversations. Like we said last time, we want to hear from you. We want to hear your experiences. It's through having these conversations of our shared experiences that will hopefully affect some change.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everyone for being with us for episode 2. We hope that, one of our stories has resonated with you, or even if it hasn't, that this conversation in part has helped or,
been of some interest to you.
Yeah.
And I mean, I found this to be so triggering. So I think I'm going to go home and do like a nice face mask or something. So if you've also found this to either be triggering or just like a bit of an intense episode, maybe you can join me and do something nice for yourself too.
Yeah. Take care and we'll see you in a fortnight.
Look after yourselves.
Bye.
Bye.